So as soon as I saw the news report that the LA County Sheriff's Department has forwarded the results of their investigation into Marilyn Manson to the LA County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, I was really left with a pretty firm impression that I think this means we're probably not going to see anything from it. So let's talk about it. The publicity itself is one of the kind of remarkable things about how all of this has unfolded in the last couple weeks or so. And so if you haven't been following, essentially what happened is that Evan Rachel Wood made a request to her supporters on social media to contact the LA County Prosecuting Attorney, Sheriff's Department, the investigative folks there, and essentially put pressure on them to find out what the status of the investigation is. Why aren't they doing anything? This is not the first time that she has made a call out like that, and it's been ineffective in the past. But what we got this time was a response, to some extent, from George Gascon, the elected LA County prosecuting attorney. And in that response, Mr. Gascon stated that the investigation was still in the hands of the LA County Sheriff's Department, so he had not taken any action into it, remained under investigation, and he encouraged additional victims, people who might have information, to go ahead and please come forward, no matter how hard it is, given the profile of a case like this. Well, then today we see that the LA County Sheriff's Department has now handed over their investigative file. They're calling it done after 19 months of investigation into Marilyn Manson. So normally these types of investigative processes don't get played out in public like this, and there's a few very good reasons why. Number one, first off, they simply don't have to. Investigations are exempt from public records disclosure in many jurisdictions and in California. So it's not something that if they don't mention it, the press is going to be able to go get a hold of the police report or something like that and, be able to have a heyday, make them look bad. The only reason the public knows about this at all is because they are choosing to tell us. And so the fact that they are choosing to tell us, to me, opens up a question about why would they want to do that? And so my suspicion is they are telling us because they are beginning the stages of the let them down easy approach to essentially announcing that there aren't going to be charges filed here. There's not going to be follow-up. Marilyn Manson is not going to go to prison. And the reason why I think this is also for several reasons. This investigation has been going on for 19 months. We know it was almost a year ago. It was in November of last year, I believe, that LA County Sheriff's Department executed a search warrant at Marilyn Manson's home to seize all of his devices, his computers, tablets, phones, things like that, things that contain digital media. So at the time, and still to this day, this is something that I recognize as looking an awful lot like a child pornography investigation. That's simply how they go down. Police get information alleging that, for one reason or another, there is some reason to believe, some evidentiary basis to believe that a person has child pornography on their devices or has used their devices to access it. Therefore, they'll be able to find evidence of that crime on those devices. So certainly what it looks like here, they went in, they seized everything, but it's been almost a year and nothing has happened. And that would be very inconsistent, in my experience, with there being, frankly, any evidence at all on any of those devices that could substantiate these accusations that have been made. Now, we know that Evan Rachel Wood has been very publicly accusing Marilyn Manson of things like pedophilia, child pornography, sex trafficking. And these are extremely serious charges. These are the types of things where, by and large, law enforcement, if they have a basis to charge you, they're going to, even if they're not done with their investigation yet, because they want to get you behind bars, get you where you're no longer a threat, no longer at risk, and frankly, also position themselves to be able to continue their investigation, pursue their leads and stuff without being concerned that, oh, you're out on the street, you might be tampering with witnesses, you might be, getting rid of your hard drives, things like that. So they move very quickly when they have evidence of these particular types of crimes. The fact that it has been almost a year and nothing at all has come from that search warrant, to me, is very, very strong evidence that there is nothing there, no basis, no reason for him to be charged. So then let's go back to now this playing out in public and what we're supposed to draw from that, because the way that this all went down, to me, it looks a lot like this is kind of political positioning. We know that Gascon has been largely regarded as, shall we say, a progressive prosecutor, somebody who is certainly associated with the left wing and possibly some more extreme elements of the left wing. He did just recently survive a recall effort. Didn't make it on the ballot this year. So his job is safe for now, but clearly he's got a target on him. He's not pleasing everybody in this jurisdiction. So he's got some political motivation to make a big Me Too case. I mean, I have to think that given what he has advocated for in his position, who he is appealing to, that type of prosecution would be quite a feather in his cap. So the fact that he went to the trouble of releasing this statement to explain, here's what's going on in the investigation and here's how we need your help. That to me reads as somebody who is sympathetic to the desire to prosecute. He wants to be able to prosecute. He invited people, come forward, give me your information. But the problem is his investigators can't find the crime. So it's a little noticeable to me that he kind of publicly put this off on the LA County Sheriff's Department and suggested, it's in their court to make this case. And so then with this news story being released today, the LA County Sheriff's Department is now very squarely putting the charging decision back on Mr. Gascon. They've made it clear now, out of their hands, the ball is in your court. So the politics of that decision to play this out in publicly, I'm gonna blame the lack of a prosecution on you. I'm gonna go ahead and now, shift that responsibility back to you, the prosecutor. Those to me suggest that, this is a hot potato game that they're playing. Nobody wants to be the one holding on to we can't charge Marilyn Manson outcome, because that's, for whatever reason, in their view, not going to be politically popular. Nobody wants to be blamed for the reason why Marilyn Manson is not going to prison. So we have this political hot potato game that's going on. At the same time, we've had this extended investigation that has not been particularly fruitful, just from what we can tell of what's been done and what hasn't been done. And then we have this rather odd, unusual decision to essentially publicly announce there might be a charging decision soon. Now, this is just insane to me because from an OPSEC standpoint, you would never alert the target of your investigation that you're about to come down on him, especially when the target of your investigation has the means and the opportunity and the legitimate ability to take themselves to anywhere else in the world in the course of their business activities. Marilyn Manson can decide he needs to go, play a gig in Malta tonight and be gone. And so what are you going to do at that point? It's just a very basic practice that law enforcement engages in, that you don't tip people off when you're about to move. And so all that can really suggest to me then, with this decision to publicly announce that it's gone to the charging authorities, is that everybody knows already there isn't going to be a move. So it's not that uncommon for the relationship between law enforcement and the prosecuting attorney to be a little dysfunctional. I've never practiced in LA County, but I've certainly read a lot about cases there, the system there, and that doesn't necessarily seem to be out of the norm for how things operate. It's a very large community, very strong political considerations and networks that go into achieving these types of power positions like prosecuting attorney. And so butting heads is not out of the norm. But in this particular situation, I would just really expect, because of these issues that we're talking about with operational security, that had this investigation been going somewhere, was there a basis to anticipate we're going to be filing charges against Marilyn Manson, that there would be some coordination between those offices, because the prosecuting attorney would need to know, what am I going to have to work with? He's going to want to be prepared. If he's going to make an arrest, he's going to want to get right on that. Why give him an opportunity to go to Malta for that gig? You jump on that at the earliest opportunity. And so if he needs an arrest warrant, you would go get it very quietly based on the information that the law enforcement officers have provided to you. Obviously, that didn't happen here. We are not hearing about an arrest warrant. We are not hearing about charges being filed in the court. Nothing. We're just hearing the investigation's done. So I am left with the conclusion that this is all because nothing is going to happen. If there were anything at risk of being jeopardized by Marilyn Manson now being aware that the prosecuting attorney is looking at this investigative report, we wouldn't be hearing any of this. It would be kept extremely hush-hush. And like I said, they would move very quickly to be able to secure him, secure the evidence, and basically position themselves to pursue what they already have evidence to establish. And to the extent they need to continue their investigation, they're then able to do that without substantial interference from him if he's, stuck behind bars in some LA County jail. So if we aren't going to see charges, then what's going to happen next? I think we have a couple possibilities here. I'm not quite sure yet in my own mind, which I think is more likely. But the options are basically it gets buried, they sit on it, and we hear nothing. Or we get some kind of formal announcement that there isn't sufficient evidence to prosecute, and therefore no charges are going to be filed. The groundwork we've already seen laid for just the public information being provided about this case does tend to suggest the second, that they have basically laid the groundwork for the announcement that there's not going to be a prosecution here, so that everybody knows, like I said, kind of let down easy the folks who were hoping to get Marilyn Manson's scalp out of all of this. But there is also a possibility that he will just lay low and not say anything about it at all, at least not for the short term. There's a couple reasons why that is probably appropriate, given the fact that there is all of this pending civil litigation that is very closely related to these criminal allegations against him. There is a risk that making all of this public will kind of jeopardize the ability of having a fair civil process in these same jurisdictions. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. The LA County law enforcement and prosecutors aren't necessarily the ones who chose to make this high profile. That was largely Evan Rachel Wood and the press, the gutter press, who, like Rolling Stone went out and covered the search warrant execution. So it's known that this was going on, but they didn't necessarily choose for it to be, receiving this profile that it's gotten. So there's just a risk then that your potential jury pool is tainted by whatever happens with this criminal investigation. If they don't charge anything, you're going to have a certain number of people who are going to think they should have charged him. That was an outrage. That was unjust, even though, they don't know what the evidence was or why that decision was made. It's just, people playing the team sport of being people. But on the other hand, you have the other risk that, well, if there's no criminal charge, then all of it is bullshit. And, maybe it's not. Maybe there's some there that should be, given some credit, given a fair hearing in a court proceeding. That is what due process is all about. I've said before, Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore are just as entitled to that as Marilyn Manson is. So, in my view, the seemly thing to do is shut the fuck up about this investigation. Like last week, I don't know why. I don't know why it was considered a good idea for these public pronouncements to be made. But I'm left with the sneaking suspicion that it's simply because what's motivating them is the political interests of the speakers, not necessarily what is good for the justice system as a whole, what is good for the fairness to these parties. It's basically what's going to get the target off of my back. So based on all of that, I'm tending to lean on the side of I think we might see there's not going to be a formal investigation. I think that the criticism Gascon would receive if this just sits quietly on his desk for an indefinite period, when he's already under some political pressure, I just don't think that's going to be a satisfying position for him. I also think that, again, just given the seriousness of these charges, the length of the investigation, if there was anything that they're going to move on, it would be moved on quickly. This is not a situation where it's going to take another month to, review all of the reports and all of the basis for the law enforcement recommendation. So if we don't see charges fast, in my opinion, they're not coming. I don't think they're coming at all because they wouldn't have tipped their hand that it's gone to the prosecuting attorney at this point. And because of the political forces at play, seems like there might be a pretty decent likelihood that we'll get a formal announcement that there's not going to be anything done with this case. On one hand, I certainly appreciate that because Marilyn Manson, this man has been smeared. He's been very publicly demonized and public opinion, I don't know, maybe has never been great for him, but it certainly, this type of thing isn't going to help. So to have him have the opportunity for some type of public vindication, at least in the sense of, well, you're not a criminal, doesn't mean you're not civilly liable for something, but there's no criminal conduct here. I can understand why he would want that, and I could see that. I could see that also being a reasonable consideration. But at the end of the day, I think it's really just Gascon is going to try to save his own skin. And at this point, he's decided that he needs to cut bait with Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore. And it's going to be interesting to see if other folks in the political arena follow suit. Thanks. We'll see you in the next one.